On today's episode, I'll go through all the new Blackhawks jersey numbers and we'll dive into which prospects made Scott Wheeler's top 100.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, just a friendly reminder to please go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. It's all greatly appreciated. 100% free as well, and really is the best way to go and show some support. I'm currently on the climb to 2,000 subscribers, and if you like what you're watching on a daily basis, plus if you're looking forward to all the Blackhawks content that I'll be dropping later on this offseason, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know, today's episode is sponsored by Indeed. You need a hire, then you need Indeed. Go visit Indeed.com/lockdown right now for a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Been a little while since I've posted an episode, but very excited to be back here today. And to kick things off, I got some new jersey numbers to talk about here. Not only for all the new Blackhawks that they signed during free agency, which was just such a chaotic period, but also some returning players who are electing to change their numbers for this upcoming season, plus a couple of prospects who have elected to turn pro. So getting into things here, starting off with Teuvo Teraivainen. Not much of a shocker here, Blackhawks fans. He's going to be keeping the number 86 that he wore in Carolina, and of course also during his first stint with the Blackhawks, he's known nothing else, and he was actually the first player in Blackhawks franchise history to don the number 86. Mike Hardman is the only other man to do so, as he wore 86 while up in the NHL for the Blackhawks for a couple of years. So for anyone who had a Teuvo Teravainen jersey from back in the day, good news for you. You'll still be able to rock that bad boy throughout his 3-year second tenure here with the Blackhawks. Next up, we have Tyler Bertuzzi, who's going to be rocking number 59. No surprise there either, as he's worn 59 wherever he's been throughout his career, right? In Boston, in Detroit, in Toronto. We've always seen him wearing number 59. He's actually the fourth player in Blackhawks history to rock 59, last worn by Rob Klinkhammer, Blackhawks legend, back in 2011, and Travis Moen, one of my favorite names of all time. Always makes me think of Travis mowing my lawn. Shout out to my good buddy Big Will. If he happens to be listening to this, he'll get a good laugh at that joke from back in our childhood. But Bertuzzi wearing 59, Teravainen wearing 86. Next up, Alec Martinez not going to be wearing 27, as we know that's occupied, but for those who maybe haven't been updated, not for the reason you may believe. I'll get into that later on here in segment 1. And he's not going to be wearing the number 23 that he also has worn in his career. That is unavailable as well, thanks to Philip Kurashev. Martinez is going to be wearing 25 for the first time in his career, taking old Jared Tenorti's number. Hopefully he'll do a little bit better than Tenorti wearing the 25, but it's also been worn by fellow Blackhawks legends, wink wink, such as Dale Weiss, who I saw score a goal in the technically last official playoff game that the Blackhawks won, Game 6 in 2016 against the St. Louis Blues. We scored in that bad boy and forced Game 7, helped the Blackhawks go on and force Game 7 there, only to unfortunately lose as Troy Brouwer wound up breaking our hearts. But Cam Barker also wore 25 during his stint. Victor Stahlberg, Kyle Calder, another Blackhawks legend from where I was growing up. So Martinez next in line to be wearing 25. Laurent Brossoit, sneakily my favorite signing of free agency day for the Blackhawks. He's going to be wearing 39, which he wore in both Winnipeg and in Vegas. Last to wear 39 for the Blackhawks was Luke Philp a couple years ago in a brief stint, but also was worn by Dennis Gilbert, for some of you who may remember him. Also was worn by Jimmy Broadway Hayes, of course, rest in peace to Jimmy, and also worn by Blackhawks netminders Cristobal Huey and Nikolai Habibulin. Next up, we have Pat Maroon, who's making a bold choice here, Blackhawks fans. He's switching to number 77, which isn't something he's worn through his career. In fact, he's actually never worn the same number for two different organizations. He's worn 62, 19, 17, 7, 14, 20, and 61. How about that? So now it feels like he's just kind of gotten into this why not type of mentality. 77, I don't know if he specifically picked it, but of course was last worn by Kirby Dach, who was the second player in franchise history to wear 77 after being the third overall pick in 2019. Paul Coffey, that's a good fun fact to give your buddy. Who was the first player in Blackhawks franchise history to wear 77? It wasn't Kirby Dach. It was actually Hall of Famer Paul Coffey in his short stint with the organization. But Pat Maroon, now going to be the third in franchise history to wear 77. I'm going to be making a hilarious jersey at some point this year because I do have a Kirby Dach sweater that was actually from the Blackhawks Winter Classic when they played the Boston Bruins. Definitely going to be going with the duct tape and Sharpie method, going right maroon on that bad boy. Ilya Mikheyev, who was acquired from the Vancouver Canucks, is going to be wearing number 95, which is not something that he's worn in his career. He actually wore 65, both with the Toronto Maple Leafs and with the Vancouver Canucks. Gotta wonder if the Blackhawks organization told him 65 was off limits, because Andrew Shaw is the only member of the Blackhawks organization to ever wear that number. Maybe Mikheyev was just feeling like it was time for a change. Maybe he was just doing it out of respect. I don't know, but he's not going to be wearing 65. He's going to be rocking 95. Next up, we got TJ Brodie, who's going to be wearing 78, just like he did the last few years with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Prior to that, he wore the number 7 for a long time with the Calgary Flames, but obviously we know that's off limits. And he's actually going to be the first player in Blackhawks franchise history to be wearing number 78. Craig Smith. Don't forget about Craig Smith. I know he kind of gets lost in the shuffle of all the forwards the Blackhawks brought in. He's going to be wearing number 15 this year, which is what he wore when he first burst into the league with the Nashville Predators. Also wore 15 last year, again with the Dallas Stars. And quite honestly, whenever I just think of Craig Smith, maybe it's because when I was a kid and when I was first playing NHL and he was a high-end prospect for the Predators or a good player for them, that's just what I think of him in, number 15. So it kind of feels right here. Obviously, he is now taking that number from Joey Anderson. I'll get into Joey's new number here in just a second. Got to wonder if those two made some kind of behind closed doors type of deal. Wonder if Craig Smith's going to be getting a nice watch here, or something's going to be going Joey Anderson's way for allowing him to wear number 15. But some real Blackhawks legends have worn 15 over the years, Hawks fans. Not only, of course, Joey Anderson, but Andrew Ebbett, Fernando Pisani, who I don't even remember being with the Blackhawks, Andrew Brunette, another Blackhawks legend here for 1 year, and then Zach Smith also wore 15 as well. So a handful of notable Blackhawks players. Then we have Artem Levshinov. We get to figure out what number he's going to be wearing moving forward. It's going to be number 55. He's going to be the 9th player in franchise history to wear 55. He has worn 5 and 9, most notably throughout his junior and college career. Both of those numbers, of course, though, are not available. 5 is Connor Murphy. 9 is, of course, retired. So Levshinov going with number 55. I don't know if that's something that he's actually worn in the past, but of course he's going to be taking that from Kevin Korchinski. But we do know Artem Levshinov is the new man rocking number 55. Getting into some Blackhawks players who are going to be changing numbers for this upcoming season. Kevin Korchinski, of course, not wearing 55 anymore. He's passing that torch down to Artem Levshinov. I wonder if Korchinski was ever really in love with that number, because he did wear 14 when he was a member of the Seattle Thunderbirds. So maybe that wasn't something that he ever really loved and kind of wanted to go back to 14, but that was already occupied by Boris Kachuk at the time. Now that Kachuk is out of the organization, Korchinski is able to slide into that number. Apologies, though, to any Blackhawks fans who are a little bit upset by Korchinski changing numbers if you've already purchased a jersey. But low-key, I think that just kind of proves you're more of a diehard fan than you actually think, having the OG numbers from back in the days. 14's also been worn by some legends, though. Chris Campoli, who I'll never forgive for making that terrible turnover in Game 7 of the first round of the 2011 playoffs against the Vancouver Canucks. Dick Panic also wore 14. Victor Tikhonov, which is a real Blackhawks legend that I don't know many fans out there will remember. Victor Edgecell, who we all thought was going to be a very good player that we acquired in that Ryan Hartman trade a few years ago. And then Chris Kunitz also wore number 14 with the Blackhawks before retiring and going to work on with their development staff. Joey Anderson jumping from number 15 after giving it to Craig Smith. He's now going to be rocking number 22 for the first time in his career. He's won a bunch of different numbers, 14, 28, 15. He's going to be taking this, though, from Nikita Zaitsev, obviously, and you can probably remember Ryan Carpenter wearing 22. Some of you have probably tried to burn the images of Brandon Davidson wearing number 22. What a disastrous move that was by good old Stan Bowman. Marcus Kruger, also in his second stint with the Blackhawks, wore number 22. Best known for his time wearing number 16, though. And then shout out to Jamal Mayers. Whenever I get a shout out Jammer, I always give him the opportunity. He used to wear 22 for the Blackhawks back in the day. Maybe the most notable change, though, Blackhawks fans, is Lukas Reichel no longer rocking the number 27. He's going to be switching to 73, which he has worn in the past for Germany. Quite honestly, I don't know how I feel about this. 73 doesn't really feel like the best hockey number to me, but apparently Reichel did this out of respect for Jeremy Roenick following his Hall of Fame election and announcement and induction, which, again, congratulations to JR. Very well deserved. And quite honestly, it's probably been up for grabs for Blackhawks players after his time for far too long here. Just not sure I love the number 73 here for Reichel. Apparently, though, the Blackhawks didn't force Reichel to make this change in terms of jersey retirement coming soon. According to Scott Powers of The Athletic, something like that doesn't seem imminent, but it is obviously not ruled out, and quite honestly, I expect it to happen now that JR is officially a Hall of Famer. So Reichel jumping from 27 to number 73, only been worn by Brandon Peary in Blackhawks history. And then we got some updates on what numbers a couple of prospects are going to be wearing. Paul Ludwinski making the leap from the OHL, second round pick, not the second overall pick. The 39th overall pick a couple of years ago for the Blackhawks is going to be wearing number 90. Should he elect to stick with that number, we do see prospects go on to change numbers throughout the years, just like we saw Kevin Korchinski do. But Ludwinski and Jr. wore number 19 and 91. Both are off the table, though. No one's going to wear number 19 again for the Blackhawks. And then number 91 is obviously already in possession of Mr. Frank Nazar. So Paul Ludwinski takes Tyler Johnson's number. He's going to be the third player in franchise history to don the 90, should he stick with that. And then Gavin Hayes has been given the number 92. We've seen him wear 29 in his junior career for the Flint Firebirds and the Sioux Greyhounds, but I guess elected to turn it around. I actually saw Wally from Shy Prospects, who does a ton of great work on X, by the way. Make sure to go and follow Chicago Prospects on X. Mention that number 29 is already taken. Maybe I missed which prospect this has already gone to, but I couldn't find anyone currently a member of the Blackhawks. None of these new jersey numbers, nor someone down in Rockford from last year wearing number 29. So help me out, Blackhawks fans. Am I being a dummy right now? Am I completely forgetting someone? Or if you know, go and let me know in the comment section who already rocks number 29 in the Blackhawks organization. Shy Prospect said it was occupied. I'm not sure if it is, but Hayes apparently has swapped things around to number 2, which was last worn by Alexander Nylander, of course. It's only been worn 3 times in Blackhawks history, twice by Nylanders. Michael Nylander wore it as well, and Gavin Hayes will be the 4th, should he elect to stick with 92. When he makes that leap to the NHL level. But there are all the updates surrounding the new Blackhawks jersey numbers for this upcoming season. Coming up in just a moment here, I'll go over which Blackhawks prospects found a way into Scott Wheeler's top 100 drafted prospects list. But first, real quick, I need to talk to you all about Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search. Match with Indeed. If you need to hire, then you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates in an instant. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things that I personally love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy, because you can skip out on the countless job sites where you're required to fill out unnecessary info, and it doesn't wind up leading you anywhere. Go and join the 3.5 million businesses worldwide that currently use Indeed to go and hire great talent in an instant. And listeners of this show, if you go and visit Indeed.com/lockedon, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Segment 2, The Athletic's Scott Wheeler recently released his top 100 drafted prospects list, which did not include goalies, FYI. That's something that he actually dropped here today, and probably something I'll be going over tomorrow. But a handful of Blackhawks prospects found their way on this top 100 list, so I figured it would only make sense to kind of dive into that, see where these Hawks prospects popped up, and also break down Wheeler's top 20 to get an idea of where the top prospects who aren't already in the NHL, where they currently are at, and how Wheeler kind of has them shaking up in order. So without any further ado, also do want to be clear real quick. The criteria here for Wheeler's top 100 was that it was players under 23 years of age currently and aren't already established as full-time NHL players, which a few names on the list probably wouldn't be in my book. Lukas Reichel, kind of as a spoiler alert, did find his way on this list. I haven't considered Reichel a prospect for a year and a half now at this point. Now, things do kind of look a little bit different, but I believe he's not going to be starting this upcoming year in the AHL. I'd be pretty shocked by that. But Kevin Korchinski, Connor Bedard, they both are not on this list. So make sure not to freak out. Just a little bit of a reminder here to not when you don't hear their names on this list. But without any further ado, let's get into it. Number 1 on Scott Wheeler's top 100 drafted prospects list, unsurprisingly, is Macklin Celebrini, the first overall selection in the 2024 NHL draft to the San Jose Sharks. Coming in at number 2, Matvei Michkov, baby. The man slid all the way down to number 7 for the Philadelphia Flyers, and what a move that is looking like for them. Not only because of the talent that Michkov provides, but there were all those worries about, whether or not he's going to come over to North America. Well, he's already here. He's already signed his entry-level contract. That pick could wind up going down in the history books for the Philadelphia Flyers at number 7. Coming up at number 3, it's Ivan Demidov, according to Scott Wheeler. And of course, this list is going to vary depending on who you're asking, because a lot of these prospects haven't even stepped onto the pro scene whatsoever yet. So it's all kind of a matter of opinion, but I think a lot of them would have Ivan Demidov somewhere here near the top. And again, that potential to pair him, who Scott Wheeler thinks right now is a top 3 prospect in the entire NHL, to pair him with Connor Bedard, who, if he was eligible for this list, would be number 1 over Macklin Celebrini, to have 2 of the top 4. Man, that's why I personally would not have passed him up at number 2. But that's just me. We're going to figure out how that decision looks for years to come. Number 4, though, to make you Blackhawks fans feel better, it is Artem Levshunov. And, I firmly believe he is the top defenseman prospect probably on this list. Simon Nemec is a little bit lower, I think that's really the only competition here. But Levshunov, again, deserved to be the first defenseman off the board. My disdain towards him being the pick had nothing to do with him as a player. It's just for the reasons I previously outlined. But according to Scott Wheeler, Artem Levshunov, top drafted prospect, not already a full-time NHLer in the entire league. Next up at number 5 is Zeev Buium, who I felt was the second best defenseman in the entire draft. Wound up falling to number 12 to the Minnesota Wild. He and Brock Faber are going to be a scary duo for years to come. Next up at number 6, Zane Parekh. I personally would not have Parekh this high, but I'm not going to argue with Scott Wheeler. Parekh, of course, went 9th overall to the Calgary Flames in this past year's draft. At number 7, Wheeler has Simon Nemec, who I would have definitely above Zane Parekh, maybe above Zeev Buium. Levshinov, Buium, and Parekh would be my big 3 defensemen inside the top 10 here. At number 8, he has Will Smith. I think you could argue Will Smith deserves to be higher on this list. I mean, the kid has torn up college hockey, was an absolute stud for Team USA. I would probably argue Will Smith, you could even have him over Artem Levshinov on this list, and I wouldn't argue it whatsoever. I would probably have Will Smith over all those defensemen. If you were asking me personally, what would I want? I'd take Will Smith. I think that kid could be a game breaker. Number 9, Wheeler has Alexander Nikishin, Carolina, pick 60th overall a couple of years ago. What great value that could turn out to be. He's been a very good player over in the KHL. And then rounding things out at number 10, Wheeler has Brandt Clark, who was the 8th overall pick in 2021 for the Los Angeles Kings. Hasn't fully stepped onto the scene yet, but has been marinating down in the AHL these last few years. At number 11, Sam Dickinson, who fittingly got picked 11th overall by the San Jose Sharks. He'll be joining Macklin Celebrini for years to come. Number 12, David Jiricek, who quite honestly could be a little bit too low for my liking on this list as well, but of course was drafted high by the Columbus Blue Jackets. 13, Gabe Perreault. To think Gabe Perreault made it all the way into the 20s in the 2023 NHL draft, which I know was super deep, is still absolutely crazy to me. That absolutely melted my mind. I knew it was either going to be Oliver Moore or Gabe Perreault for the Blackhawks at number 19. And if there was a redraft, no way Oliver Moore or Gabe Perreault make it that far. Number 14, Logan Stankoven, who's already kind of broken through for the Dallas Stars. 15, Berkeley Catton, who I personally think the world of and I think is going to be a very special player. 16, Cole Yzerman, baby, for the New York Islanders. Now, obviously, where Yzerman rates depends on who is the one making the list, but yeah, I'd probably have him somewhere in this ballpark. I firmly believe in his goal-scoring abilities, man, and I'll die on that hill that the Blackhawks should have taken him at number 19. Really, really wish they did. Number 17, Anton Salayev, big Russian defenseman for the New Jersey Devils. They have him and Simon Nemec, which is very scary to think about. Caden Lindstrom also on this list, second member of the Columbus Blue Jackets with David Jiricek, of course. Number 19, Cutter Gauthier, who was part of that infamous, if you will, trade from the Philadelphia Flyers to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for Jamie Drysdale. And then rounding out the top 20 is Zach Benson of the Buffalo Sabres. Already kind of an established NHLer in my book. I wouldn't consider Zach Benson a prospect. That's kind of where I think things are a little bit finicky. Logan Stankoven as well, right? Like, I don't know if I'd put those guys on my list. But regardless, getting into where the other Blackhawks fell in these rankings, Artem Levshinov, the only one who cracks in the top 20. Next up, though, is Oliver Moore at number 44. Quite honestly, I was a little surprised to see Oliver Moore's name pop up before Frank Nazar's. And it's going to be really fun to watch those two compete over the years to see who's going to be the better player, because I think they're both very talented. I think Frank Nazar is going to be the better offensive player. I believe Oliver Moore, though, is the one who might be more of a penalty killer, might be used more in defensive situations, and I think has the better chance of being a true center because he is the better skater than Frank Nazar. Frank also plays with great pace, but Oliver Moore is the better skater between the two, and if you have to choose, I think you're going to go with Oliver Moore. But Frank Nazar coming in next at number 59. I personally, you all know if you, I guess I should say, watched or listened to my Blackhawks Summer 2024 top prospect rankings, the real debate was who was going to come in higher, Frank Nazar or Oliver Moore. I personally had Frank Nazar. Scott Wheeler goes with Oliver Moore. Going to be fun to see how that shakes out in years to come. Next Blackhawk on this list, the fourth is Sam Rinzel, big right-handed defenseman, selected 27th overall, of course. A couple of years ago when the Hawks traded back into the first round, had a phenomenal freshman season last year with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Rinzel, I think, has such a high ceiling because he's 6'4", 6'5", maybe even at this point, already over 200 pounds, skates like a deer, and I think kind of provides a little bit of a two-way game. I think he's going to be a good puck mover. Still has to develop his shot, but he also has the size to become a good defender. He's just going to take a little bit longer than some other players to kind of get to that point, to kind of fill out his body a little naturally. But there's no denying the runway there, and I think that's why all Blackhawks fans, media, and even NHL scouts and media have him as one of the top prospects in the Hawks organization, even though he's still probably 2 or 3 years away from making his number on the NHL scene. And then the last Blackhawk part of this list, as I talked about earlier, Lukas Reichel at number 83. I wouldn't really consider him a prospect at this point in time, but Scott Wheeler elected to include those types of players. Curiously, though, 2 Blackhawks prospects not listed in the top 100 that I think were deserving of being in there. First and foremost, Sasha Boisvert, which I think some Blackhawks fans are going to see that he was in the top 100 and go, oh my gosh, especially when you see, Cole Yzerman at number 16. That was a guy who was available for them, and instead they took Sasha Boisvert. Quite honestly, I think Wheeler did Boisvert a little bit of a disservice here, and he did mention that both Boisvert and Del Mastro were among his final cuts. However, Boisvert, regardless of how I feel about the pick, I still thought he was a top 25 prospect in the 2024 NHL draft. And that certainly should get him on this list comparatively to some of the players that were on this list that were also part of the first round. I would have Boisvert ahead of a couple of them. So I thought he certainly deserved to be on there, and had guys like Reichel, Logan Stankoven, Zach Benson not been on there, I think there would have been room for Boisvert. I think Ethan Del Mastro absolutely deserves to be on this list as well. I think he has legitimate top 4 upside. I think his puck moving game is developing, his confidence with the puck is developing, and he's got great size, great physicality, and knows how to play a shutdown defender role. So I think Ethan Del Mastro, an under the radar guy who, looking back on this in years to come, you might say, how didn't he end up on the top 100? But the Blackhawks were among the 8 teams who had 5 prospects listed in the top 100. So you love to hear that. Even though some guys have started to step on the scene from the rebuild, they still have a very deep prospect pool, and only the San Jose Sharks, Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Montreal Canadiens had more prospects on the top 100 list. But there are all the Hawks prospects and my thoughts on Scott Wheeler's top 100 drafted prospects. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans. Before I'll wrap things up, I'll talk about whether Adam Boqvist could be the next Gustav Forsling for the Panthers. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, just a reminder to go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks on X as well. You can find the account at capital L, capital O, _ Blackhawks, creeping up on 2,000 subscribers, 2,000 followers, I guess you would say, on that account. So go and help me out. If you're on X, go and follow the Locked On Blackhawks X account. And also make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, I did want to be sure to mention that former Blackhawks first round pick Adam Boqvist, remember him, Boqvist's time with the Columbus Blue Jackets officially came to an end when the free agent market opened on July 1st. The Blue Jackets elected not to re-sign him, but he did wind up getting picked up by the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. 1 year, $800,000 deal for Boqvist. And you got to think, just from a Blackhawks perspective, when you see Boqvist go to the Panthers, you're like, oh boy, worst nightmare type of season. Because any defenseman who leaves the Blackhawks, regardless of they're good, a highly touted prospect, not, we watched Michael Kempny go to the Washington Capitals and play top pairing minutes with John Carlson to help them win the Stanley Cup. We watched Jan Ruda go to the Tampa Bay Lightning and play meaningful minutes for them in back-to-back Stanley Cups, right? Like these worst nightmare type of situations, they just happen that way sometimes. And then Gustav Forsling, of course, turns into one of the best two-way defensemen in the entire league, helps the Panthers win the Stanley Cup. So I think it's only natural to have these kind of nightmare-ish thoughts when you see something like this. I don't think Adam Boqvist, to kind of bury the lead here, is going to be the next Gustav Forsling. But one thing I will say is I think this is a really good, no downside type of move by the Florida Panthers, who have already found success kind of further developing a type of player like this, who was highly touted, had clearly some good offensive skills, and came into the game at a young age, but just wasn't able to fully piece it together and figure out how to be good enough in all areas to kind of make yourself stick. And that was the question with Gustav Forsling, with the Blackhawks, with the Carolina Hurricanes. And he really didn't develop into this type of defender until he turned 25, 26 years of age. And I don't think Adam Boqvist is ever going to be that capable of a defender, but I do think his offensive abilities make him intriguing, make him worth the gamble. And a team like Florida to go and pick him up where he'll be in a good spot. Adam Boqvist has never really been in a good spot in his entire career, right? Came up in the NHL with the rebuilding nightmare Blackhawks, and then gets traded to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who haven't been any better since he wound up going there. And there have been some upside moments for Boqvist since joining the Columbus Blue Jackets, especially his first year there. 2021, 2022, he potted 11 goals, only added 11 assists, but still had 22 points in 52 games. As a 21-year-old, you're like, okay, maybe we have something here. The next season, unfortunately, he was a little injury depleted, only played in 46 games, but did have 24 points, 5 goals, and 19 assists. And injuries, though, unfortunately, got the better of him last year. Ultimately, Columbus wound up parting ways with him after he only appeared in 35 games. The goal scoring also dipped. He only scored once and added just 9 assists for 10 points. However, when you kind of do a deeper dive on Boqvist, like I said, there are a lot of reasons to believe there could be something there. And I don't ever believe he's going to be the type of defenseman that got him drafted 8th overall by the Blackhawks in 2018, right? He's only 6 foot, 185 pounds. He's never been much of a serviceable defenseman in his own zone. He doesn't provide any physicality. He's not a penalty killer, but he does move the puck very well. His offensive analytics are always good. His Corsi for percentage is always above 50%. He creates a lot of scoring chances. And aside from last year, he's been a good finisher in the NHL, especially as a defenseman. Now, again, he turns the puck over, doesn't offer you much defensively, but there could be an offensive type of role like an Eric Gustafsson situation for Adam Boqvist, I think. And again, he's only going to be 24 years old in August. I don't think he's going to be the most serviceable defenseman, but I do think there could be some untapped potential there. And Florida is a great spot for him to go where he can be free. He's going to be around guys who are playing with a ton of confidence. I think that's going to be good for him. I don't think, again, he's going to be the next Gustav Forsling, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on Adam Boqvist down with the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers through this upcoming season. Another reason why I bring this up, Blackhawks fans, is since we are in the peak of the offseason here, the content is kind of tough to come by. I'm going to be talking about all the Blackhawks first-round picks post-2014 and kind of talking about where they're at, how they've developed over the years, and all that good stuff. So be on the lookout for that episode dropping, maybe even later on this week. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it's uploaded each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X, my personal account at Jack Bushman2. As far as my strictly Blackhawks account, that's at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, happy to be back. I'll see you on the next episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.